What if I told you some of the world's most brutal slaying weren't committed by adults, but by children? Kids who smiled in school photos and strangled toddlers after recess. Boys who played with action figures then tortured their neighbors. Girls who didn't know long division, but knew how to kill. These are not horror stories, they are real. And they'll make you question everything you think you know about innocence. Welcome to our countdown of the 10 youngest serial offenders in the world, where age is just a number, and murder has no minimum. Before we dive into these chilling real-life stories, take a moment to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because here, we uncover the stories that many would rather forget, but the world needs to hear. Number 10. Alyssa Bustamante, the 15-year-old who took a life for curiosity. Some crimes haunt a town, others haunt a nation. But what do you call a crime committed not out of anger, not out of desperation, but out of curiosity? In 2009, in the small town of St. Martins, Missouri, life moved slowly. It was a quiet community where families trusted each other, where kids rode bikes through tree-lined streets, and everyone knew their neighbors. But beneath that calm surface, a storm was brewing, and at its center was a 15-year-old girl named Alyssa Bustamante. Alyssa wasn't the kind of teenager you'd expect to be the center of a tragedy. She was smart. She had friends. Her teachers described her as intelligent and capable. But others noticed something else, something harder to define. Her journals were filled with drawings and writings that were dark, even disturbing. She wore heavy makeup, dyed her hair different colors, and sometimes joked about death in a way that didn't sit well with classmates. Still, no one truly believed she was dangerous. Troubled maybe, but not dangerous. That would all change on the evening of October 21st, 2009. 9-year-old Elizabeth Olten lived just down the street. A sweet, shy girl who loved Disney Channel shows and pink backpacks. On that Wednesday, she left a friend's house just a few doors away walking home, as she had done many times before. But she never made it. Her family immediately knew something was wrong. Within hours, the community rallied. Police, neighbors, volunteers, all searching the woods, knocking on doors, calling out her name. It wouldn't take long before suspicion crept toward the Bustamante home. Authorities soon discovered that Alyssa had been the last person to see Elizabeth. At first, she denied knowing anything. But as police dug deeper, they uncovered a chilling truth. Alyssa had not only planned the crime, she had written about it. Her journal, found during a search of her room, included a shocking entry written the day after Elizabeth vanished. In careful handwriting, she detailed what she had done, how she had dug 2 holes days before, how she had choked, stabbed, and slit the throat of a young girl, and how she thought it was amazing. Then, at the bottom of the page, she casually wrote, "Now I have to go to church. LOL." Investigators were stunned. Not only because of the graphic nature of the entry, but because of how emotionless it all seemed. After being confronted with the evidence, Alyssa led police into the woods behind her home. There, in one of the shallow graves she had dug days before, they found the body of Elizabeth Olten. Alyssa Bustamante's story isn't just about what she did, but why she did it. During court proceedings, prosecutors revealed that Alyssa had a troubled past. She had attempted self-harm multiple times, been on medication for depression, and had recently experienced a major emotional spiral. Her mother was absent. Her father was in prison. She was being raised by her grandmother, who was doing her best, but struggling. Alyssa's writings suggested that she had long fantasized about hurting others. Experts debated whether she truly understood the gravity of her actions, or if her mental health issues played a central role in disconnecting her from empathy. But one thing was clear: she had planned it. She had chosen her victim, and she had carried it out with chilling precision. Initially charged with first-degree murder, Alyssa was tried as an adult despite being only 15 at the time of the crime. Facing the possibility of life without parole, her legal team negotiated a plea deal in 2012. She pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and armed criminal action. The judge sentenced her to life in prison with the possibility of parole, plus an additional 30 years. During the sentencing, Elizabeth's mother, Patty Price, gave a heartbreaking statement. "My daughter was an angel, and now every day I live with the image of her lying in that grave." Alyssa, in her only public apology, said, "I truly am sorry for what I've done. If I could give my life to bring her back, I would." But many doubted her sincerity. As of today, Alyssa Bustamante remains behind bars. She will be eligible for parole, but it's unclear whether she ever walk free again. The psychological evaluation in her case remains a matter of debate, as does the question of whether someone so young can truly grasp the lifelong impact of a violent choice. The story of Alyssa Bustamante is one of the most disturbing in modern American juvenile crime history, not just because of what happened, but because of how early in life it happened. In the years since the case, Missouri and other states have re-examined how they treat juvenile offenders. But the pain remains for the Olton family and for a town forever changed by what one 15-year-old did just to see what it felt like. Number 9. Craig Price, the teen whose crimes terrified a community. He was just 13 when it began. By the time the truth came out, 4 people were gone, and a quiet Rhode Island neighborhood was forever changed. It was the late 1980s in Warwick, Rhode Island, a peaceful suburban town, where neighbors looked out for one another and most families left their doors unlocked. It was the kind of place where tragedy felt far away. But in July 1987, something unimaginable happened. A 27-year-old woman named Rebecca Spencer was found in her home, her life cut short in an act of shocking violence. There was no clear motive, no forced entry, no suspect. The crime stunned the community and went unsolved. At the time, no one could have guessed the person responsible was barely in his teens and living just down the street. Craig Price was, by all outward appearances, an average kid. He was a tall, athletic teenager who played football and cracked jokes. His neighbors knew him as polite and helpful. Teachers said he was smart, though sometimes quick to anger. But behind that smile was a secret. By the time he was 15, Craig Price had taken the lives of 4 people, including 2 young children. And he wasn't finished yet. 2 years after the first incident, in September 1989, tragedy struck again. Joan Heaton, a single mother and nurse, was found in her home alongside her 2 daughters, Jennifer, 10, and Melissa, 8. The scene horrified investigators. This time the police acted fast. Suspicion quickly fell on Craig Price, who lived just a few houses away. He had been seen behaving strangely in the neighborhood, his hand was injured, and his story didn't add up. When detectives brought him in for questioning, they weren't prepared for what would happen next. Craig confessed not just to the Heaton family case but to the unsolved death of Rebecca Spencer 2 years earlier. He spoke in chilling detail, calm, matter-of-fact, no signs of guilt, no remorse. Here's where the story becomes even more unsettling. Craig was a juvenile, just 13 when he committed the first act and 15 when he was arrested. Under Rhode Island law at the time, juveniles could not be tried as adults, no matter how serious the offense. That meant, in theory, Craig Price could be released from juvenile custody at age 21, having served only 6 years. The public was outraged. Citizens demanded the law be changed. Politicians rushed to close the loophole. Craig Price had become a symbol of what could happen when the justice system failed to anticipate the unthinkable. While Craig couldn't be retried for his earlier crimes, officials worked to keep him behind bars through other means. Over the years, he faced multiple charges while incarcerated: assaulting correctional officers, threatening prison staff, possession of weapons behind bars. Each new charge added time to his sentence, and each one suggested the same thing: Craig Price was still a danger to those around him. In 2017, he was transferred to a Florida prison after attacking another inmate with a makeshift weapon. That same year, he received a 25-year sentence for attempted murder inside the facility. To this day, he has never shown remorse. Psychologists who studied Craig pointed to a mix of factors: possible personality disorders, environmental triggers, suppressed anger, and a lack of emotional empathy. Some believed he was a textbook example of an individual who slipped through every safety net: school, community, family, and legal. Others saw his case as an opportunity to talk about mental health in youth, and the risks of ignoring warning signs in children who show patterns of aggression or cruelty. As of today, Craig Price remains incarcerated in Florida, with decades still left on his sentence. He will be eligible for parole at some point, but given the ongoing pattern of violence, release seems unlikely. He is no longer just a juvenile offender. He's a man in his late 40s, who began one of the most disturbing criminal paths in American juvenile justice history. Craig Price's case changed laws. It changed the way Rhode Island and much of the U.S. looks at juvenile crime, especially when it involves extreme violence, but it also left scars. For the victims' families, the wounds never healed. For the town of Warwick, the name Craig Price still evokes fear. And for everyone who studies the justice system, his story remains a chilling reminder that evil can sometimes wear an innocent face, and that age, sadly, isn't always a reflection of innocence. Number 8. Amardeep Sada, the youngest serial offender in modern history. It's a story that feels almost impossible to believe. A child not even 10 years old linked to the deaths of multiple infants in a small village in India. Could someone so young truly understand what they were doing? Or was something else at play? 2007, in the rural village of Musahari in Bihar, India, life was simple. Dirt paths, close-knit families, and homes where everyone knew each other. But that peace was shattered when a series of infant deaths shook the small community. At first, it seemed like tragedy had simply struck more than once. One child passed away, then another, and then another. Parents grieved. Rumors spread. But no one could make sense of it until someone noticed a disturbing pattern. Each child had last been seen with the same boy. Amardeep was just 7 years old. A quiet, often withdrawn child who rarely spoke and spent much of his time alone. He was part of a poor family living in a modest home. His parents worked long hours, and little attention was paid to behavioral changes. But when yet another infant went missing, this time the 6-month-old daughter of a neighbor villagers grew suspicious. Someone claimed they'd seen Amardeep leading the child away. When confronted, the 7-year-old didn't cry, he didn't run. Instead, he reportedly confessed, calmly pointing out where the child's body could be found. And that's when the community, and later, the country realized they might be looking at the youngest serial offender in modern recorded history. According to reports, Amardeep admitted to 3 separate incidents involving infants, including his own baby sister and a cousin. Authorities were stunned. How could a 7-year-old not only commit such acts, but then speak about them with such emotional distance? Local police said he showed no signs of remorse during questioning. He even reportedly smiled at times while describing what had happened. At just 7 years old, Amardeep was below the age of criminal responsibility under Indian law. That meant he could not be tried in court the way an adult or even a teenager would be. Instead, he was placed in a juvenile observation home, where he would receive psychological evaluation and care. But this raised serious ethical questions. What causes a child that young to commit repeated harm? Can a child that age truly understand death? How should justice be served for the victims, for their families, and for the child himself? There were no easy answers. Even psychological experts were divided. Some suggested severe early trauma or mental health disorders. Others believed he may have been imitating behavior he didn't fully understand. When the story broke, it sparked a media frenzy, both in India and globally. Headlines branded Amardeep as a child serial killer, even though legal systems and mental health professionals urged a more careful clinical look at the case. The identity and whereabouts of Amardeep have been kept largely private in the years since, as he was a minor at the time. Under India's juvenile laws, he likely remained in observation until he turned 18, and his records would be sealed to protect rehabilitation efforts. Today, he would be in his mid-20s. No official updates have ever been released. Amardeep's case remains one of the most disturbing and mysterious in juvenile justice history, not just because of what happened, but because of how young he was when it did. It challenges our very understanding of child psychology, morality, and the capacity for violence in early life. Is a child born this way or shaped into it by their environment? Can someone that young truly understand life and death, or are they simply mimicking what they've seen? What do we do when a child crosses the line from innocence to something far darker? How do we protect society and still offer the possibility of redemption? The case of Amardeep Sada offers no clear answers, only difficult questions. And a haunting reminder that sometimes the most unsettling stories don't come from grown men in dark alleys, but from the smallest hands in the smallest places. Number 7. Jesse Pomeroy, America's youngest known killer of the 19th century. Long before the age of criminal profiling or forensic science, one child terrified an entire city. His face was young, but his crimes were something else entirely. This is the chilling case of Jesse Pomeroy, the boy they called a fiend. If you are still watching this video, don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit that notification button for more jaw-dropping stories. Back to the story. In the early 1870s, Boston was a bustling American city on the rise. But beneath its cobblestone streets and horse-drawn carriages, fear was quietly spreading. A series of disturbing attacks had started making headlines. The victims? Young boys? The suspect? No one could imagine it would be a child. But the truth would soon shock even the most hardened investigators. Jesse Pomeroy was just 12 years old when strange rumors began circulating about him. Born in 1859, Jesse had a difficult upbringing. He was often isolated, bullied for a mild facial deformity, and raised in a troubled household with a strict and sometimes abusive father. But nothing about his early years prepared anyone for what was to come. Neighbors described him as odd intelligent but cold. He seemed to lack empathy, and he had a fascination with discipline and control that went far beyond childhood mischief. Between 1871 and 1872, several young boys were lured away and found injured, but not fatally. Each one described a terrifying encounter, blindfolded, tied up, and threatened. But they had survived. Still, in the 19th century, there was little understanding of child offenders. At first, many assumed an adult was responsible. Eventually, Jesse was arrested at just 13 for his involvement in the assaults. He was sent to a reform school, but was released after just over a year due to good behavior. It was a tragic decision, because shortly after his release, things escalated. In 1874, two children went missing just months apart. The first, a young girl named Katie Curran, was last seen entering Jesse's mother's store. The second, a 4-year-old boy named Horace Mullen, was found in a Marsh's life taken in a brutal manner. Suspicion quickly returned to Jesse. Police discovered disturbing items hidden in his home. And when Jesse was questioned, he confessed, not just to the recent death but to Katie's as well. Her body was later found buried in the basement of his mother's shop. The city of Boston was horrified. A 14-year-old boy responsible for 2 deaths and multiple earlier attacks. The press dubbed him the Boston Boy Fiend. In 1876, Jesse Pomeroy was found guilty of first-degree murder. But due to his age just 16 at the time, he was spared the death penalty. Instead, the judge ordered a sentence that was nearly unheard of: life in solitary confinement. He was placed in Charlestown State Prison, confined to a small cell, cut off from all other inmates. For over 40 years, Jesse lived in near-complete isolation. He would later be transferred to Bridgewater State Hospital, where he remained until his death in 1932 at the age of 72. To this day, Jesse's case is studied by criminologists and psychologists around the world. He is considered one of the youngest confirmed serial offenders in U.S. history. What made his story so disturbing wasn't just his age but the deliberate nature of his actions, the calm way he described them, and the absence of remorse. Many experts believe Jesse suffered from severe conduct disorder, what today might be labeled as early-onset psychopathy. But in the 1800s, such terms didn't exist, nor did the resources to treat them. Jesse Pomeroy's crimes reshaped how Americans thought about juvenile crime, mental illness, and the potential for violence at an early age. His case helped push reforms in how young offenders were handled, and sparked early debates about whether children could truly be held accountable the same way adults were. More than a century later, his name still evokes fear and fascination. The story of a child who became a legend for all the wrong reasons. Can someone be born dangerous? Or was Jesse Pomeroy a tragic result of a broken system, untreated trauma, and a time that didn't know how to help? Number 6. Eric Smith, the 13-year-old who took a life and asked for a second chance. It was a summer morning like any other, until a small boy never came home. What followed was a mystery, a confession, and a legal case that would divide a nation. This is the story of Eric Smith, the boy who shocked his town, and then asked to be forgiven. On August 2, 1993, in the quiet town of Savona, New York, 4-year-old Derek Roby left his house for summer camp at the local park a short walk from home. He had done it before. His parents watched him walk off, unaware it would be the last time they'd see him alive. When Derek didn't arrive at the park, panic set in. A search began. Hours later, his body was discovered nearby, hidden in a ditch just off the path. The community was devastated, a senseless act. A young child gone, and no one could understand why. That is, until another child came forward. At just 13 years old, Eric Smith was a red-headed boy with glasses, a backpack, and a face that looked more like a school portrait than a police lineup. He lived nearby. He rode his bike around the same park. And like Derek, he was part of the local community. But Eric was different. He had been bullied for years. Classmates teased him for his appearance and called him names. He often seemed withdrawn, angry, and misunderstood. Adults saw him as intelligent but troubled. When Eric walked into a police station days after the incident, his confession would stun everyone. Eric admitted that he had encountered Derek on his way to the park, lured him off the path, and committed the crime. His explanation? He had been holding in years of anger and he wanted to see what it felt like to release it. He said he didn't know Derek personally. There was no previous conflict. He simply wanted to act on what he was feeling. Psychologists later described Eric as emotionally disturbed, but legally he was still responsible for his actions. In 1994, Eric Smith was tried as a juvenile charged with second-degree murder. His defense argued that he needed treatment, not punishment. But prosecutors saw something else, a dangerous pattern that couldn't be ignored. The jury agreed. Eric was found guilty and sentenced to 9 years to life in juvenile detention, with the possibility of parole starting in his early 20s. But parole didn't come easily. Over the years, Eric appeared before the parole board 10 separate times. Each time he expressed remorse. Each time he claimed he had changed, but each time the board said no. For Derek Roby's family, the idea of parole was unthinkable. His mother and father attended nearly every hearing, urging the board to keep Eric behind bars. The public was divided. Some believed Eric was a rehabilitated man. Others felt that some acts should never be forgiven, no matter how young the offender was when it happened. In October 2021, after nearly 3 decades, Eric Smith was finally granted parole at the age of 41. His release was kept quiet, no public interviews, no statements. His location is confidential to protect both him and the families involved. To this day, Eric Smith has expressed remorse in writing, stating, "I can't erase what I did, but I've worked every day to become someone different." The case of Eric Smith remains one of the most controversial in American juvenile justice history. It raises powerful questions. Can a child truly understand the weight of their actions? Should someone be punished forever for something they did at 13? What does true rehabilitation look like? Some say Eric is a success story for the juvenile system. Others say the system failed the Roby family the day it allowed parole. One boy lost his life, another lost his future. And for everyone caught in the middle, there are no easy answers. Do you believe Eric Smith deserved a second chance? Or should some crimes have no expiration date? Let us know in the comments. We've only just scratched the surface. From teenage rage to eerie calm, these cases force us to look at childhood through a darker lens, one that doesn't always match our assumptions about innocence. In part 2, we'll continue the countdown featuring even younger offenders, stranger motives, and stories that will stay with you long after the screen fades to black. Make sure you're subscribed, hit the bell so you don't miss part 2, and let us know in the comments, which of these stories shocked you the most? This isn't just true crime. This is the unsettling truth about youth, violence, and the justice system.